Out the cabinet secretary.
Right.
But I had a cabinet secretary 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay. 2 years ago. All out of the blue ask me, do you really think he can't run again like this?
You know, it was us in the press who said, hey, look, he's taking the short staircase. It was us in the press that said, hey, he's only doing one event a day.
Well, I mean, in fairness, you got former colleague of yours looked in the camera and told the audience, F you, if you don't believe this is the best version
and this is why I'm not going to
stuff.
sit there and defend that.
Later. I just refuse to accept this stupid premise because it's a right-wing, manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. The people at fault are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris.
What's going on, guys? We got to talk about some cope that's going on with the fake news. So if you all seen my previous video with this Axios reporter coming out and admitting that the Joe Biden cognitive decline cover-up was a massive media failure, now you have blowback from that. Like, apparently people are salty, they're upset, and they're trying to cover their you-know-whats. They're trying to still make up excuses, and they're doing it in the most fraudulent and illegitimate ways. What you do is say that we did this wrong, we need to do better, just like this other Axios guy said. I can't remember his name, but who the hell cares? But now you got Chuck Todd of MSDNC, formerly with MSDNC, out here melting down and saying it wasn't our fault, we just believed the White House. And we're going to get to smoking him, but we also got this guy, Chris Cillizza, who is from CNN or formerly at CNN. I'm not even sure who this guy is. Both of these guys just making the stupidest excuses, just blaming the White House. As a journalist, you're supposed to ask questions. With the Republicans, they're extremely adversarial, and they don't just accept everything that they say. They find the one little teeny tiny nitpick, and then they poke at that, and they never let that nitpick go when it's Republicans, conservatives, and Donald Trump. But when it's Joe Biden's very obvious cognitive decline that every single person could see, I literally know children who say that Joe Biden seemed incoherent. He seemed like he's so super old. He seemed like he don't know what he's talking about. Children. But we're supposed to believe that the fake news couldn't tell? Let's go ahead and react to this foolishness.
What happened here is a couple things. So, number one, people say to me all the time, of course it was a cover-up by the media. Just look at Joe Biden.
It was.
Of course he was out of it. And to that I would say, there is and there should be a much higher bar for a media outlet or a reporter to say that Joe Biden is clearly mentally slower or incapacitated than it is for someone to just say, he has dementia, he has Parkinson's. You can say that. But for the media to report that, it's a very high bar.
The media didn't ask any questions. They covered for his medical reports. They didn't press on anything as it related to seeing medical reports. I mean, sometimes they did. I will give them credit. I remember they was asking Karine Jean-Pierre, and Karine Jean-Pierre was like the Matrix. He's up in there just dodging everything. But they didn't press harder like they should have. You think it was Donald Trump, they would have just let this go? They questioned Donald Trump's cognitive ability, even though he keeps destroying these freaking IQ tests. So no, I'm not buying.
And I don't think that bar was met. So yes, when I watched Joe Biden, the eye test made me think, as I watched him, man, he has really slowed down. And I'm not sure he should run for a second term. It did not make me think, man, he definitely, something is really wrong with him, and I'm going to cover it up so that he can win. No.
Bullshit. See, this is what I mean. You guys let me know in the comments. Do you believe Chris Cillizza, whatever the heck his last name is, do you believe this guy? Because I'm telling you right now, I do not. I'm going to cover it up so he can win. Yes, I do think that's what you did. I think that's what you all did, which is why so many people rebelled against you, because this is just not believable. Like, this just sounds fraudulent. If you're saying, well, we didn't have enough evidence, like, well, the eye test, like, what do you mean you didn't believe your own eyes? What about all the other people who criticized him and said that they thought he was too old? What about all those polls? What about all the Republicans said it? What about all the independents? Like, so if the media is saying one thing, but everybody's saying something else. The only people who, even the Democrats were saying this. It wasn't just Republicans. Even a lot of Democrats were saying this. So if everybody's basically saying the same thing, but the media is not, you damn right it's a cover-up. What the hell are you talking about?
Absolutely not. But I will also add this. That does not, the fact that I do not believe there was any coordinated cover-up by the media of Joe Biden's condition, that does not get us media off the hook, and here's why. I made a video about this before. You can look at it. It's called My Apology for My Joe Biden Coverage. The media should have asked more questions about Joe Biden. I should have asked more questions about Joe Biden and his health. We should have dug harder. Because the eye test was what it was, and he looked old and frail, and when he was in public, he would sometimes lose his train of thought. We should have done more reporting. Now,
guys, look, sometimes lose his train of thought. I'm going to show you guys a couple quick snippets as a reminder.
My theology professor at the Catholic school I went to was a guy named Riley, last name, and he had been drafted by the Green Bay Packers. Thanks to all the members of Congress and Homeland Security Secretary. I'm not sure. Because we cannot get reelected. We cannot win this reelection. Excuse me, we can only reelect Donald Trump. It includes major commitments from Ukraine to impact and to implement democracy. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him. Soon NATO will be the 32nd freestanding, have free, 30 free. We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get them. No.
Now, you're telling me that people who saw Joe Biden and interact with him more often than anything that we could ever possibly see, you're telling me they didn't notice even more stuff? No. These people are still trying to play us for stupid, and they're mad at Republicans and Trump for pointing it out and exposing them. And instead of coming clean, you know what? This was wrong. We shouldn't have did it. We're not going to do it again. Okay? Just say that. We're still not going to really forgive you, but it'll be better. You'll have a better chance with some people than to basically continue lying about it. That's what they're doing.
People did. Alex Thompson at Axios did some. The Wall Street Journal political staff did some. People here and there wrote consistently and clearly that maybe he's too old. I tried to talk about his age fairly frequently, but I should have talked about it more and I should have asked more questions. And then you get to the why of that. Why didn't you ask more questions? And
Bingo.
I will.
Let's hear it.
I'm not speaking for all of the media because all the media is a vast thing. But here's what I would say. Any study that you ever see about who reporters vote for, they vote for Democrats much more than Republicans.
Oh,
and I think what was going on.
Who knew? Whoa. Who knew the reporters vote for more Democrats than they do Republicans? And you mean people don't trust that you're going to be unbiased? Oh, wow. Who knew? You know, these people love to claim when you call them Democrats and say your side and stuff like that. Oh, I'm not a Democrat. Oh, I'm not a Democrat. But you vote for Democrats every time. Stop playing me for a fool like you think I'm stupid. Nobody here is stupid. The only person who's stupid here is you for thinking anybody's going to believe you're stupid, dumbass.
Here is I think it was an inherent and sort of unconscious bias more than a conscious bias, but I think the reporters covering this White House were too willing to take the Biden team's word for it. Anytime you asked about Joe Biden, they would say, well, I mean, he's 80, he moves a little bit more stiffly than he did before, but man, he is totally with it. He outworks our 20-something staffers. And I think people, reporters, were too willing to just say, okay, that makes sense. They were too credulous. They didn't ask enough questions. Their skepticism meter was not turned up high enough. And I think that had it been a Republican in that office, particularly if that Republican had been Donald Trump, there would have been less credulity. There would have been less willingness to just go along with what the Trump White House was saying. Like,
how is this not a coordinated effort if you're admitting that, well, yeah, they're going to hold Trump more accountable than they will Joe Biden because Joe Biden's a Democrat and that's who these woke reporters and journalists and anchors support. That is a coordinated effort. That means that they want to make Donald Trump look bad in any way possible, be it fabrications, which is what they do all the time, just make stuff up, And when the Democrats have things that are wrong, they are biased and they try to cover them up because they want Democrats to win. It's real simple. It's not rocket science.
No, he's fine. You don't see him in his great times. He's amazing. I think there would have been more hard questions asked. And I think there should have been more hard questions asked by the media of Joe Biden and Joe Biden's staff about his health. I absolutely think that's true. So
this is not a media failure. This is a failure of the Democratic Party. And I just sort of the virtue signaling that some people have done to try to say that the media missed this story. They didn't miss this story. No. David Ignatius wrote, I just refuse to accept this stupid premise because it's a manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. The media's got plenty of things to attack them for, and there are MSNBC and CNN and pundits that absolutely carried water for Joe Biden.
What do you mean? You just left your job like a month ago. Maybe 2 months ago, and you trying to act like you don't count as NBC personnel that carried water for Joe Biden? Give me a freaking break.
But they're not journalists. They're former strategists that carried water for Joe Biden. The journalist, David Ignatius, wrote a very high-profile column in October of 23 saying, is he really running again? This doesn't seem like a good idea. People like me were promoting Dean Phillips's campaign because he was running
Wall Street Journal did a bunch of coverage.
Sense. So it's not like this. This isn't WMDs, where the White House worked with the mainstream media to manufacture a story that did not exist. That was a press failure, massive press failure.
Guys, I mean, if you want to keep a tally, you got Russia collusion, you got the pandemic and where it's sourced from. Do the masks work? Do they not work? Does the vax work? Does it not work? You got the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean, I could go on and on and on. You got the Maryland man. It hasn't stopped, guys. He's acting like this one thing, though, just because the media got something slightly off. This was a huge thing. This is the president of the United States. And Chuck Todd want to sit over here and play. We about to cook him even more. Just stay tuned.
This was not that failure. This is an attempt by some to virtue signal, and it's this horrible sort of pitting different news organizations against each other, when ultimately the people at fault are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, every elected member of Congress.
And so Chuck is partially right that the Democrat Party and their leaders are to blame, but he's also wrong because the fake news is responsible for reporting accurately. If they do not report accurately, if you say, hey, I think Joe Biden's going through some sort of cognitive issue, I think he's got Alzheimer's, I think he's got dementia, I think he's got something going on where he's just incapable of running again, he's incapable of being a president, and then they consistently shut you down. They act like you're being mean. They say you're making stuff up. They say you're not a doctor. You can't diagnose this. They make every excuse in the book, like Chuck Todd did, CNN's Fake Tapper did. No, I'm not trying to hear that, well, it was the fault of the White House because they told us that everything was fine, and so did Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Guys, you're telling me that anything that you hear from the Democrats are just going to believe in the future? Because you know what this tells me? This means that when they lie, which they always do, so that they could win, which is what normally politicians do, even Republicans are going to do that, then it's telling me that you're just going to accept whatever the Democrat lies are, and anytime you're caught busted, then you're just going to make additional excuses, which no, that's not going to work. And Chuck Todd he's been in freaking media, I think working at MSDNC since like maybe before I was even born. This guy is actually pretty old. And I think he's been there for like a very long time, like 30 years or something. Now I'm older than 30, but still, like, this guy has been doing the same thing for a long time. You telling me he doesn't know any better than to not trust the word of politicians? BS. And here's why. The other day on Piers Morgan Uncensored, he said so himself that the media intentionally was not trying to properly cover Joe Biden's decline because they basically did not want to help Donald Trump win, the exact opposite of what Shazilla was saying earlier.
Look, we were subtle. He's using the back staircase. He's not using the front staircase. Hey, he's not doing any interviews. So there was this reluctance to draw the conclusion to say, is he not doing this? And that I agree with. That was held back a lot. The only thing I can chalk it up to is this, whatever you want to call it, this fear that some members of the media had sometimes that they would be perceived as helping Trump if they somehow diminished Biden, right? That it was some sort of zero-sum game.
So Chuck filmed that episode, recorded that episode of Piers Morgan Uncensored. He was a guest a while ago. That was, I don't know how long ago it was, but I know sometime this year prior to today. Okay, the first clip that we reacted to was from today. So what changed? He's basically saying, well, they basically didn't want to help Trump win. So they didn't really say anything about Joe Biden. They just kind of just overlooked it, right? Something along those lines. But in the clip we just watched, he's saying, well, I mean, no, it's not the media's fault. It's Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. He's blaming everybody else. You never heard of the word accountability? I mean, this guy is operating like a freaking 16-year-old girl or something. Like, dude, take some accountability. Like, stop being a little P word and take some accountability. You're not a little boy. You're not a little girl. You're not a child. You're not a teenager. You're not even a young adult. You're an old man blaming other people for you not having legitimate, honest press coverage. And it is disgusting. It is pathetic. And it makes you look like a little freaking weakling and a liar in a Democrat shield determined to save your reputation by tearing down someone else's. We know that the Democrats are a bunch of lying pieces of garbage, the politicians, that is. We know that they love manipulating and lying to people, and they trick people into believing whatever BS and virtue signaling that they have. I find it extremely cringe, the fact that he would say that the right wingers are the virtue signalers. No, we just told the truth. I'm not even really like that much on the right. It's just the Democrats are so far to the left. That's what I suppose. I oppose far leftism. I don't support far rightism. I just don't support craziness on the left and covering up cognitive declines and covering up crime and bad economies and stuff like that. That's the stuff that I don't believe in. Chuck just admitted all these people vote for Democrats. So why do they always want to pretend like, oh, they're not Democrats? I'm neutral. I do fair press coverage. No, it's all a lie. You got busted. And now you're still denying accountability. Because you're doing that, you're never going to regain the faith of the people back. It's going to be lost for good. If it's not already, I would argue that it's already lost because a lot of young people are watching the legacy news. A lot of young people are, you guessed it, watching people like me on YouTube. They're watching TikToks. They're not getting news from Chuck Todd, a legacy news media anchor. They're not getting news from Abby Phillip of CNN fake news. They're watching the viral clips, the Scott Jennings clips. They're watching the Steve Miller clips. They're watching Trump directly and what he says. That's the stuff that they're watching. So Chuck, you guys are cooked. You had a chance to come clean and you're still failing miserably. And because of that, you got to pay, and you got to pay dearly. And that's why we're cleaning shop. That's why you're out. That's why Fake Tapper is only a matter of time till people like him and Blitzer are out. Abby Phillip is a Democrat shield getting exposed on her own show. That's humiliating, getting exposed on her own show basically every day, every night. She's on there with Scott arguing with like 10 people on her side, and Scott destroys all of them. It's a humiliation ritual pretty much every day. And until these people can learn to start telling the truth, stop being unhinged lunatics, take accountability, try to understand where other people are coming from on another side instead of just lying and carrying water and covering up things and then blaming other people when things go wrong, when you have false and stupid and bad and horrible and illegitimate and fraudulent press coverage. Until you stop doing that, then you're never going to regain the trust back of the people. And that's if it can be regained at all. And that is a very big if. But these are just my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate you watching a Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
You had 8 visits from a Parkinson's specialist from Walter Reed in 9 months. You wrote it off. You demonized instead President Trump's mental acuity, and you're trying to tell me that, yep, in hindsight, in the post-mortem, yeah, we did a little bit. It is so much more important than that, and I think it truly led to deaths of Americans, because propping up that particular commander-in-chief was so damaging, was so destructive to America. So I can't wait for the accountability. This fine, step one, go to your AA meeting. But the accountability from Congress is what I'm looking forward to, and hopefully criminal repercussions.
Yeah, it's